I truly don't know how to feel about this one. Punk Hazard is weird. Punk Hazard is like Thriller's Bark on steroids. But let Mark tell you that. I think Mark is going to go ahead and agree with me. Let's see what he has to think. Let's see what he has to say about Punk Hazard. Because there's a lot of lore, but I don't know. Let's play the intro, guys. And let's start the video immediately. I got nothing else to say, but let's watch. Please make sure to subscribe, share, and continue to follow Nakama's journey. Totally not Mark. We are here. Part 15. Punk Hazard. Let's do this. What's going on, gang? It's your boy.
A tale that spans 46.
All right, here we go.
Honestly, felt a little like 86 chapters, but now that I finished it and had the correct amount of time to digest everything that happened, I think I understand what Oda was trying to do with, and in many ways succeeded in doing with, this gassy boy. Last week I covered the depths of Fishman Island and dealt with some really heavy themes and characters. So I was in need of something a little less intense and something a bit more traditional in terms of One Piece storytelling.
Not gonna happen here.
I got that with this, but it isn't all good in the frozen fiery tundra of Punk Hazard. And today I plan on exploring it from top to bottom, explaining myself in full. And so, without further ado, I'm totally not Mark, and these are my first impressions of, thoughts on, and review for
Punk
my
Hazard.
very first steps into the brave new world of One Piece. This is the long-winded, the intense, and at times extremely clever Punk Hazard.
Punk Hazard was... I can't... It's weird, man. Intro.
Hazard is a funny one. On one hand, I found myself enjoying it toward the end and the beginning, but for a section of the story that wasn't super small, I found myself dreading the next page turn and worrying about composition way more than I thought I would. Yeah, you heard me. Composition. I'll explain what I mean a little more clearly later on, but for now, generally, I will say that as arcs in One Piece go, I thought...
Hey, the editor's playing all this. Look.
But I thought it suffered from...
Mr. Editor, if you watch this video, I'm on to you, buddy. Pirate Warriors in the background music? You think I wasn't gonna catch that, huh? I catch everything around here! Everything!
As well as some clarity issues, as I said, regarding page composition and dialogue. But more specifically, in essence, this is a pretty standard One Piece story. They stumble upon a new, somewhat troubled island before they get caught up in rabbit holes and traps that are much more treacherous than they anticipated. There's some really great action, wonderful character exchanges, and some genuinely fantastic surprises that honestly caught me more off guard than any other swerve that might have been in the series.
I totally forgot about her. Maybe.
Once again, as it does, the story kicks off in an incredibly strong and interesting way. As readers and audience members at this stage in the story, we are primed for enjoyment and excitement. We've been waiting a very long time to, at long last, get to the new world of One Piece, inhabited by the very emperors of the sea themselves. And Lord knows we want to get revenge on Akainu and Blackbeard for all the stuff they've done. And so, thanks to those things, obviously illustrated, we are already excited to see what comes next. And trust me, Oda is completely aware of all of this. Things off with an extremely character-rich, albeit slightly understated, character interaction on the Sunny. Nami, taking her eyes off the boys for 10 minutes to have a shower, leads to them almost getting eaten by a giant fish and getting sucked into a vortex. It's moments like this that I really do appreciate, where we get to see and experience the dysfunctional family the Straw Hats have ultimately become. And what's also great is that One Piece likes to take moments of reprieve to just bask in the world it's created too. You see, immediately after following this instance, the crew, in a moment of wonder, becomes surrounded by giant whales the same species as Laboon, which is kind of awesome because if no one told me that they had been on the other side of the red line now, I know that they were by virtue of the fact that I know that these whales are indigenous to this specific area of the world. I know this because the story told me this hundreds of chapters ago. It's instances like this one I experienced while reading that puts into my mind stark clarity of how much I've absorbed regarding this world and its world building. It's a really unique and wonderful feeling knowing that we are exploring a story that's consistent.
Let's go.
But all is not well, and using this moment of calm to immediately contrast to one of mystery and tension, the comms on the Sunny, once its services in the New World, immediately start to pick up an SOS signal from an unknown island not
Here we go.
by any of their more interesting, and leads them down a series of rabbit holes of discovery and adventure. But let's take a moment to consider something else first, or at least I will. This piece of information sort of took me by surprise, so it's theory time.
It's theory time.
We've gotten into a routine of sailing, looking at the log post, pointing to the next island, chilling out on that island for a bit, and then repeating the sequence. But Punk Hazard was different. This was an island that, if the hadn't been picked up on their comms, would never have been discovered by Luffy and his crew. And what's even more curious is that Smoker, later in the story, doesn't have a problem finding the island at all. Which leads me to believe that there might be islands that can't be found unless the government so chooses. And here's my theory. The secrets that the world government are so hell-bent on hiding could be concealed on an island that cannot be discovered by either anyone because the poses have been destroyed, or strictly by higher-ups in the world government. Perhaps even the One Piece is there. But yeah, just a theory for now, but totally possible, right? Regardless. The crew follow this distress signal to Punk.
I like your theory. But I don't know if you're correct or wrong. I can't say. I just say keep reading.
Listening to their entire conversation and is now in pursuit of them. And if that wasn't
interesting though,
enough, once Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and Robin go to investigate the island a little bit more, while the others stay on the ship, this happens. Way more fun than I thought it was going to be, and to be perfectly honest, sprinkled in enough mystery to hold my attention almost immediately. So, naturally, when Luffy does pull an embodied pair of legs off of this dragon, I was left scratching my head a little bit as the legs effectively communicated through farting.
What?
Yeah, you heard me right. The legs communicated through farting. Jokes aside, though, I love the beginning of Punk Hazard. It takes advantage of our expectations of how we think the arcs are going to play out. And one facility led by Dr. Vega-punk, a person that's mentioned almost as often as Luffy, and yet we still haven't seen him in person yet.
True enough.
Since a particular series of events changed everything that I will absolutely be talking about a little bit more later, this island is now recognized as a wasteland by the government that no longer uses it. And with this knowledge, when it becomes apparent that there's something much more sinister going on,
much more,
island, the contrast is striking back the ship.
Oh.
I honestly love this moment because it establishes a bunch of different things, including the antagonist of the arc itself, but also gives us a goal beyond exploring, which is for the gang to regroup. And in this effort, we get to understand and become exposed to a host of new and mysterious circumstances, like the guy's head chopped up into pieces that they were held in. Clearly, this is the headpiece of the samurai puzzle that Luffy and the others began a scene ago, which adds even more purpose behind them reuniting there and then. This little samurai guy needs to find the rest of his body, so might as well help him. Oh wait, he's a massive douchebag.
He's a massive douchebag.
This. I'm determined to get through a single video without mispronouncing a name, by the way. You get out.
Hold on, what the hell did you say?
It's
Kinemo.
Which adds even more purpose behind them reuniting there and then. This little samurai guy needs to find the rest of his body, so might as well help him. Oh wait, he's a massive douchebag. This particular samurai's name is... this. I'm determined to get through a single video without mispronouncing it. To be honest, things from here. Frankie burst them out of the cell using his weaponry and lasers, which is awesome.
Awesome.
Once they do get out, went from a 7 to a 10.
Wow.
I have several questions.
So,
yeah, this story might answer a question here and there, but my god, if it isn't hell-bent on laying down 10 new questions for every one it answers.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it makes sense why it unravels things the way it does too. Punk Hazard is, in every sense of the word, a setup arc for the one to immediately follow it. But that's not to say that
everything that he's saying is what I just said. Punk Hazard is a conundrum. It's like Thriller's Bark on steroid, because that's what Thriller's Bark did. Everything this is happening here is exactly what they're like. They land. All of this is a formula from Thriller's Bark in the sense that also gives exposure to bigger topics at the same time. And unfortunately, the clusterfuck of a lot of things in such little time can overwhelm you and make you feel like, you know, either you're missing a detail or Oda is just giving you too much shit in one plate. But at the end of the day, you end up realizing like, oh no, not really. It just takes long for him to explain the shit.
Chilling and heartwarming characters. creating wonderful moments like when Sanji cast his pride to the wayside to embrace his humanity by helping out this snarky but defenseless samurai. And let's not forget about the damn kids. Nami decides that despite it being near impossible to escape these jumpsuit-wearing goons that are pursuing them out of this facility, Nami feels an overbearing level of responsibility for these little, and not so little children who are begging her to save them. But perhaps, most interestingly, we discover some fascinating tidbits regarding the history of this island, thanks to the main focus of this arc and the main villain. Caesar the Clown, mad scientist of the Vega-punk hazard facility.
Caesar.
Turn myself into a pickle, Morty! And it's
I turned myself into a pickle, Morty!
Different subplots, though really there are two major ones, and these two major ones should be obvious at this point. The first being Team Luffy, comprised of himself, Robin, Zoro, Usopp, and the Samurai Legs as they try to find the
Samurai Legs.
The second major point of view comes in the form of Team Nami crew. There's also Smoker, Tashigi, and the G5 troops, and finally
Caesar the Clown,
who was left on the ship when the others were kidnapped. Probably because they thought he was dead. And to be honest, his part of the story, while minor, it does play a large role in the story in terms of structure. He is literally the only reason Team Luffy find out about what happened to the rest of the crew and the summit. And so far, everything in the story is working for me. There's some tight pacing thanks to some well-placed minor fight scenes, some really interesting mysteries, and now we have a goal to supplement multiple points of view. It's all gravy. And that's when a bloody fascinating piece of info is dropped.
Oh, yeah.
You see, all this time we've been on this island, a large part of the conversation surrounding it have been about
what the hell happened
and why it's so fiery at different parts of it. And we learned this visually by way of Nami noticing the clouds above the fiery hellscape we were initially presented with, and then of course that's confirmed in the scenes with Brook. So how did this island come to be the way it is? Fiery on one side and icy on the other? Well, Smoker answers that question. The best part about this is that it makes perfect sense. In fact, it makes so much sense that if you or I were in the right frame of mind when looking at this question, there's a good chance that we could actually answer it for ourselves because we were given the answer back on Fishman Island. Back then we were told about a vicious battle that was held between Akainu and Okiji, competing for the right to be the new fleet admiral. It happened about a year ago and lasted 10 days.
That Chrono Trigger in the background.
It was the site of that very battle, and since the battle's completion has been in a constant state of hot and cold. I love this not only because we could have just done it given that piece of visual information, but Punk Hazard, as we know, is an island not pointed to by any of the log poses. It's been abandoned for quite some time, and it's very close to the new HQ of the Navy. Like, everything about this sudden new piece of information really felt like someone putting the last piece of the jigsaw in place. It made perfect sense and made some really interesting lore surrounding.
This is why it's good, because it's giving everyone all the rest of the information.
3 years before that very fight, a massive explosion happened that wiped out life in the area. This was the reason why Okiji and Akainu fought there in the first place, and that very explosion on that day is one of the mysteries that's explored in this arc too. How did the catastrophe happen? And if that wasn't enough, Smoker arrives on the supposedly abandoned island, knocking on the door, and wouldn't you know who opens it but Law.
You already know that you're gonna fall in love with Law, bro. You're gonna fall in love with Law.
In this situation, and once again added even more curiosity to the occasion. At this point in the story, I had seen a disembodied samurai, battlefields replaced by long complete battles, dragons, giants, and a little more recently, I've seen Luffy punch a centaur in the schnoz. Bananas with a capital B, and now we are being reintroduced to Trafalgar Law. Now a warlord of the sea, as it looks like he might be involved with the goings-on on the island. But this story isn't perfect, and it...
Better drivers deserve a better car insurance experience. So download the Root Insurance app and get a price based.
Does have its flaws, and one of those flaws
Donkey
that came to my attention around this time surrounded the equipment of Usopp. No matter what the circumstances are, you best believe that he has some random thing for this occasion in his arsenal of random gadgets and projectiles. Now, this isn't a huge issue, but it did irk me a little bit because we aren't made aware of the materials he has from the get-go. It comes across as convenient more than anything else, and when something convenient comes out of nowhere, it just feels lazy. The character of Usopp explains his supplies by saying that all sorts of strange things were on the island that he was training on, but without telling us what it is that he found, it just feels like a random grab bag of whatever the team needs to get out of this situation in a pinch. And that's fine, I guess, but it's significantly less interesting than what we had before, with him trying to figure out his way around different obstacles while also knowing what he has and what he's capable of. Like, remember his fight with Luffy, or Arlong's grunts, or heck, even this battle with Perona. These fights specifically worked because we knew what was in his arsenal, and the fun came from how he bluffed or came up with amazing new ways of using this sandbox of abilities we all knew he had. I think that's something.
But that's because you haven't gotten there.
World Usopp is missing for me. Another convenience I noticed was that the SOS signal that led the Straw Hats to the island in the first place really was another one of pure coincidence. I was hoping that it was a trap set by someone that wanted something from them or anything nefarious really, but it was again pure happenstance. The centaurs that Luffy decked earlier were being attacked by the samurai that they encountered in the cell, and thus they, in desperation, made this distress signal. Had this not happened, Luffy and the crew wouldn't have found this island at all. Again, these things aren't anything major, but it doesn't feel as well thought out or as tightly told as the stories like Alabasta or Skypia were for me. Now, let me be clear. At this point in the story, I am still all in, and to be honest, it was easy for me to turn a blind eye to these issues I had, especially when this happens to Smoker as he was talking to Law at the door of the facility. Alright, so we get the first convergence of different narrative threads now, and boy is it interesting. It shows us the powers of his devil fruit ability, swapping the minds of the Straw Hats running past in an instant before removing all of the communicators from the Navy present. In Law, taking this course of action, we learn that whatever's happening on this island is top secret and that no one can know that he's there. Again, this is all interesting stuff, and what's more is that this is followed by another great action sequence, which, I gotta be honest, this arc is filled with. I enjoyed almost every fight in this arc more than what we got on Fishman Island. And I have no idea if that's a controversial take, but there it is. The fight that takes place is that of Law versus Smoker, who is at this time a vice admiral in the Navy, having been promoted from captain over the last 2 years.
Yeah, let's fucking go.
But I really like how we are not only seeing the progression of the main characters, but also the secondary and tertiary characters like Smoker, Aokiji, Akainu, and even Tashigi, who has been promoted to fill the position of captain that Smoker vacated. And during this fight between Smokey and Traffy, full display with some great choreography.
Oh yeah,
this is like the best Smoker fight in the series so far.
Smoker boy, Smoker-chan.
Not only is cool, but given the fact that Smoker is also a devil fruit wielder, it serves to indicate his confidence in his own abilities to hold on to this weapon, such that it can be used against him. Small inclusions like that are subtle, but they go a long way in helping to communicate an individual character to an audience. But long story short, Law, using the op fruit abilities, takes out Smoker's heart from his chest before swapping his mind with Tashigi. Speaking of mind swaps, I think now is a good time to discuss the mind swapping aspect of this story.
Oh wow. Ah!
This mind swap plotline, while it makes sense, doesn't do anything in the story except delay its events from unfolding. At first, it's funny watching Chopper struggle inside the body of Sanji and watching Frankie struggle inside the body of Chopper, but for every Nami inside of Frankie's body to laugh at, there's a Sanji inside of Nami's body and a Smoker inside of Tashigi's body that's only there for fan service. And when I say this, I'm not saying that they are never funny, sometimes they are, specifically the way Smoker, purely out of habit and comfort, insists on sitting with his shirt open in Tashigi's body. But for me, this gets old really fast, and ultimately with everyone whose minds have been swapped, because they aren't used to the bodies of their crewmates, every task they need to achieve becomes a punchline or extremely annoying to get through. And that's not even the worst part. So, Nami is in Frankie's body, right? Frankie is in Chopper's body, Sanji is in Nami's body, and Chopper is in Sanji's body. Now, to some of you that might not sound super complicated to understand, but when you have all of them arguing in the same scene surrounded by all the different characters and children, suddenly it becomes incredibly confusing. So much so that in the middle of one of these chapters, Oda makes them wear these masks of their actual character in order to avoid confusion. Not to mention the sharp uptick in the number of characters drawn into the speech bubbles that they are speaking in. Simply there to help the readers remember who is in what body. I have no idea if this is easier to follow in the anime, but in the manga it got pretty annoying in parts, specifically when the Straw Hats regroup, adding even more talking heads to the mix. Or at least I felt this way. And this brings us to the second act of the story, and in this part, I really started to find it difficult to get through.
I hear what you're playing in the background, boy.
And this is why. While I could read read and get through all of the information relatively easy.
Yeah.
It was by no means easy to understand what's happening or going on just by looking at these pages. There's tons of text, tiny panels, and so much conflicting imagery that when you look at it, your brain might not know what's happening on it without reading through it.
Right.
Okay, I can already hear a lot of you say, well, obviously you're supposed to read it. It has words. It's a manga after all, and I totally understand that point of view. That means it's a visual medium as much, if not more, than it is a written one. And in this instance, I really don't think Oda was making the most out of the visual components of this medium. So often he leans so much on the words rather than the drawings to speak for themselves. And speaking of the text, so much of the text propagated throughout these chapters are flavor, with characters saying inconsequential stuff or reacting to things that only serve to make the conversations feel more authentic. And in many instances, I can totally appreciate stuff like that. It's a large part of what makes this series as successful and immersive as it is. But there's a time and place for everything, and when I turn the page and I'm faced with this useless text and a panel structure that isn't intuitive, it makes me not want to read as much as I could. And just for argument's sake, I'm going to demonstrate what I think good panel structure is. I'd like to point you guys to these random pages from early Dragon Ball Z. While Dragon Ball was by no means as narratively complex or competent as One Piece, visually, I believe Dragon Ball is on another level narratively to many other manga, not just One Piece. Manga is a visual format, and Akira Toriyama used this format to the best of its ability to communicate to his audience what he wanted to do on a given page, with clarity and a panel structure that would suck anyone into reading it. Now, I get that a lot of people might want the dialogue and cluttered panel structure because they feel it gives more information to them and that's what they're after, and I can totally see that point of view. But
it's a visual thing.
And personally, I don't see why we can't have both. Heck, One Piece from the first chapter through to Enies Lobby was paneled extremely well, so I see no reason why it can't be like that again. With some minor alterations and some smart use of paneling, these pages could be so much more visually engaging while sacrificing almost nothing in terms of story. But alas, that wasn't the case with these chapters, and as a result, it felt more difficult to get through this arc than any other I had read through in the past. And to be honest, this is a shame because I actually really enjoyed a ton of things that were going on in this arc. I liked how the focus of the arc kept shifting as new and exciting things came to the forefront, like, at this point in the story, the team reunite and split into 3 groups. Nami and Chopper stay with the kids who are going through withdrawals from the drugs that Caesar gave them. Yeah, you heard me right, this is an arc that deals with drugs. Then there's the team of Sanji, Brook, and Zoro who ran out after the samurai looking for his kid, as Sanji himself felt responsible for his well-being, which I honestly really enjoyed. And finally, the team of Luffy, Usopp, Robin, and Frankie who venture off to find the lab to confront
that little fucking head on his
symptoms that they are exhibiting after his care. And in retaliation to this, Caesar enlists the work of the Yeti brothers, giant hunters in this icy tundra we've not yet seen before. And as I mentioned moments ago, these guys only present an issue to the Straw Hats because they are after getting their bodies swapped and don't know how to fight in these new ones. The same way Fishman Island wanted to handicap the Straw Hats by surrounding them in water has handicapped them in this way by swapping their minds. So, in other words, the Straw Hats haven't had a single worthwhile challenge since the return to Shabaldi. And perhaps that's why I've enjoyed fights with the Dragon and Smoker so much. One is a novelty and the other doesn't involve the Straw Hats at all. Interesting information out of this exchange as these Yetis pursue and hunt for the Straw Hats. They shoot Brownbeard in the face, execution style, with these massive cannons point blank, before stealing Nami away in Frankie's body. And I like this because they actually steal Frankie's body for 2 reasons. Firstly, because he has the tech from Dr. Vega-punk, which is valuable, and they want to use him as bait to lure Luffy and the other prime targets in, which I thought was really good strategy considering they had no chance once Luffy actually arrived to save her. That had to fight. He have a common goal right now, and that together they could take down an Emperor of the Sea, which is a massive thing to say still at this point of the story. In typical Luffy fashion, he agrees to the proposal. With love, despite the crew begging him not to.
You're gonna betray me?
Caesar is hell-bent on getting these kids back to conduct further weird experiments on. He also acts as this godlike figure to his subordinates, gaining their trust, and he has this massive demonstration planned in order to sell his work on the black market to someone who goes by the name of Joker. Something Joker mentioned is that Caesar is the only one that can produce this chemical compound called SAD, used by some extremely important people on the black market that he again sells through a vendor called Joker, who becomes extremely important later, and I'll get to that. Together, the forces of Luffy, the Straw Hats, and Law have to work together in order to stop all of this from happening and to save the little Law is on their team. He switches Chopper back into his body, Frankie back into his, and Nami into Sanji's body because he's still out with Zoro and Brook looking for the samurai, which they do eventually find. This is where the story started to pick up for me again. There's a little bit of will they, won't they, with Sanji's group still out in the wilderness someplace, and there's a clear goal now after being established. Help the kids and stop Caesar. So let's see how Punk Hazard stuck the landing. So it comes to light that this Caesar guy was responsible for why this island, Punk Hazard, became deserted in the first place. Apparently 4 years ago, against Dr. Vega-punk's wishes, he blew up the facility and showered the area in poison, destroying most life. And he alone survived unscathed because of his devil fruit ability. And this conclusion I actually enjoyed, but there are still aspects to it that I thought could have been improved greatly, and once again, it came in the visual clarity department. At this point, I feel like I should reiterate that I am not criticizing the anime's visuals here. I simply haven't seen it. I am just commenting on my experience with the manga this week. And once Luffy, Law, and all the other Straw Hats with the samurai converge on the base from various points, things started to feel a little cluttered and messy again for me. Now, of course, during this time, a lot of stuff is happening. Sanji, in an act of selflessness, rescues the samurai's body from below the water, locating it using his haki. And there are plenty of really interesting and cool moments where haki is used by both Zoro and Sanji in the story.
Haki users now.
But ultimately get captured. Joker's revealed to be Doflamingo. Caesar plans weapons demonstration freaky gas to kill everybody that no one can touch, and it's invading the compound. Okay, look, long story short, this is all bad stuff happening, and it basically translated to all the Straw Hats and Law in a situation where they need to capture Caesar alive and cannot get touched by this gas, all the while trying to save a bunch of giant savage children from a bad come down. So yeah,
from a bad come down.
Super bad, that is until we meet this guy.
Oh yes. This motherfucker.
Okay, so this is a bit of a bigger problem. This guy's tough and ends up picking a fight with a bunch of them in this effort. And to be honest,
fuck this guy.
The only aspects from it that I really enjoyed and stood out for me. Whether it be Luffy's 2 decisive encounters with Caesar, socking him in the face, Sanji cracking his shit against Virgo's shin.
Virgo.
Or even Smoker and Law's altercation with Virgo, and Law ultimately getting the upper hand in the end.
Yeah.
This section, if nothing else, reinforces that the new generation is here and it's their time. And this is abundantly evident with the characters like Usopp, Chopper, and Frankie, who throughout this story get plenty of wonderful moments. And so now it's time to discuss some of the aspects I didn't really enjoy. Caesar as a villain didn't do it really at all for me. He came across as a two-dimensional cartoon villain that didn't really click. I knew he offered no challenge to Luffy, really, and his motivation and justifications for what he has done did seem far too outlandishly devious to even be remotely credible for him. He seriously looks like he should be from one of those old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Not in a good way. One thing I thought that I was really going to enjoy was the keep-away nature of this set piece for the conclusion. Given that they were all in an enclosed space with the gas slowly filling up the various chambers, I thought the manga did a pretty poor job visually of informing us about the area. In the past, I thought Oda did a brilliant job at establishing the areas like Alabasta, Enies Lobby, Skypiea, Barate, Arlong Park, and all the other places that we were introduced to. In these scenes, I was never left scratching my head wondering where they were. Would anyone please tell me? Because I could tell by the context.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is a deserted place.
The situation in this arc is very boring and everything looks the exact same. And in the same way Oda had to make the others wear masks because the things weren't clear enough when they swapped their bodies, in this section we have to look at map after map after map of the area in order to understand or have any sense of where people are fighting and where everyone is in relation to each other. And the only rooms that look so
but they do that also in the previous arcs though.
The control room, and almost no fighting takes place in these rooms beyond Law, Smoker, and Virgo's situation that, again, doesn't last very long. Needless to say, despite liking the concept behind this section, despite liking the gas idea to create tension, and despite all the effort that went into it, I thought the environment chosen in this instance really held it back from what it could have been. Now, this is obviously just my impression from reading the manga, and who knows, I might react to how it was portrayed in the anime. But as of right now, I was ecstatic to finally be leaving the facility and braving the outside world as the crew, Law, G5 Smoker, and Tashigi all escape with their lives from the place. And again, the fights that
that show was crazy.
Fantastic. I love Luffy's altercation. I really like what Smoker and Law were doing together, and when Law eventually cut down Virgo, that was really
badass.
Once again, highlighting that this new generation's time has finally come, that they are ready to compete with the big boys. But now we're coming to what I think was probably the most shocking part of the entire story.
Oh yeah. Harpy. Why are you into compliment?
See, there's a section of this that leans heavily on the devil fruit abilities of Trafalgar Law. You see, he has this ability, as it's already been established, to remove a part of someone from their bodies while also keeping them alive. And using this ability, many people in this story have their hearts removed from their bodies, like Smoker and Law's very own. And in an effort to prove his allegiance to Caesar, he gives his own heart to him in exchange for Monet's. Now, one character I didn't really speak about during this video was that of a character, Harpy Lady, called Monet. She appears very early on, and she's effectively a subordinate of Caesar and Virgo. During this particular section, it was explained to us that in order to gain Caesar's trust, Law offered up his own heart in exchange for Monet's, taking out both of them and offering up his own to Caesar as collateral. In essence, putting his life in Caesar's hands. This whole thing was basically to act as a truce of sorts during the story. Now, this was established before the final act. Like, this was known going into the final battle. But this was genius, as when Caesar was lying outside the compound, being punched into oblivion and betrayed by Law, he still had the heart given to him by Law. And while this is happening, Monet is about to blow up the lab in the same devastating fashion Caesar did 4 years ago, per his instructions. Orders her to do this, and as she moves to flip the switch, Caesar, in a moment of anger, stabs the heart of
Smoker.
But nothing happens. As it turns out, the heart he has given to Caesar wasn't
Smoker
at all, but Monet's, and thus Caesar's undoing was his own. I friggin' loved this little swerve and never saw it coming at all. And something I also like in this part is Caesar's motivation to not kill Law right away once he figures out that he's after turning on him, because he already has a built-in desire to kill him by using this new gas that he's developed to show to the criminal underground of the world. And to be perfectly honest, that as well as the conclusion of this arc really helped him finish strong. Now that Law has in his possession Caesar wearing some sea prism shackles that Usopp managed to swipe very intelligently, you gotta remember Caesar's the only guy who can produce this SAD chemical compound stuff that goes on the black market and is sold to emperors of the sea like Kaido, who uses it to make animalistic zone-type devil fruit users for his army. Now that he has Caesar in his custody, Doflamingo, a main vendor on the black market that supplies Kaido with all of this stuff, now has his supply cut off and is now at the mercy of Law. Which he doesn't appreciate at all, but he has no choice but to do as he says. While I didn't adore this arc like I normally do with the vast majority of One Piece's stories, I still think that this one was overall enjoyable despite its minor misgivings I have with it. Some small pacing issues with some wordy sections ultimately held this one back from being a standard great arc, which is a shame.
Look, what you guys gotta know, what you guys gotta understand is that I knew coming in Punk Hazard was going to be filled with this. This was gonna be Punk Hazard. I already knew that. I already knew that Punk Hazard was gonna be filled with this. It was gonna be filled with that. Like, it's more setup for the next arc than anything else. And that really takes away from the experience of this arc. And it actually feels, like you said, that because of the layout and the style or whatever, it just feels like Oda wasn't really caring too much about this arc besides giving the information that he wanted to give. That's just what I think. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed this video. I like the content. Thank y'all for watching and all. Like always, I appreciate you guys coming through and watching these reviews, watching these reactions. Again, if you're new to the channel and enjoy the Totally Not Marked series of the Nakama's journey, make sure you go ahead and hit the sub. We'll be back next week with another Nakama's journey. Holla at the boy DBGTX. And I am out.